Hi guys, it's me ShazzaHD and welcome to tonight's stream where we're going to go through quite a bit of news from the Formula 1 world. Obviously we're going to go through some stuff from yesterday's 2022 US Grand Prix, but also we're going to get into as you can see via the title, some key updates into the Red Bull cost cap situation and a couple other things as well. And to do with the US Grand Prix, we'll be getting into, of course, the incidents between George Russell and Carlos Sainz, also Fernando Alonso versus Lance Stroll, and we'll be getting into why Fernando Alonso has ended up basically, not being disqualified from the race results, but ended up getting a 30-second penalty 5 hours after the race had finished. We'll get into that later on in this stream, and also the FIA's findings into what happened at the Japanese Grand Prix, and get into that as well because that came out over the weekend. And yeah, just getting into basically some of the news that's happened in the last few days during the US Grand Prix weekend. I hope all you guys are doing well after last night's Grand Prix that I thought was very exciting. That was probably the best Grand Prix we've had since probably the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, which was almost 4 months ago. So yeah, it was a very good race. Fights for literally every position out there on the track, which is exactly what we want to see in Formula 1. And that's exactly what we got yesterday at the Circuit of Americas. And as I said, right before the actual lights went out to start the race on my race watch along, which obviously you can go and check out on the channel. I think there's a link below in the description to it if you want to go and relive the US Grand Prix from yesterday. But I'm pretty sure right before the lights went out, I said that the US Grand Prix at the Circuit of Americas usually does deliver. And it did once again yesterday. It's such a great track for racing. And thankfully we got another brilliant race yesterday. But what we are going to do in this stream is we're going to go in order of starting with the updates to the Red Bull cost cap saga. Then we'll get into the Russell Sainz incident at turn 1 yesterday. Then the Alonso Stroll incident, which caused the second safety car. Then we'll get into the FIA's findings from the Japanese Grand Prix and a couple changes they're going to be implementing as a result of their findings from that race, such as who is going to be race director from now on until the end of the season. And we will get into why Fernando Alonso was given a 30-second penalty for the US Grand Prix yesterday. We'll get into all of that later on in this stream. So yeah, that's the plan for tonight. And hopefully all you guys are doing well no matter what time it is in your part of the world or where you're from. I hope you're all having as best a day as possible given whatever circumstances you're all going through. And I hope you'll join me tonight to go through all of these stories, and make sure as the stream of course goes on to let me know in the live chat your thoughts on all of these topics, such as the updates that I'm going to go through in a moment to the Red Bull cost cap situation. What did you think of the Russell Sainz and Alonso Stroll incident? And also, what did you think of why Alonso was given a penalty? And maybe some other things as well from the US Grand Prix. So make sure to keep your comments coming in the live chat, because plenty of times tonight I will keep coming back to you guys to see what you have to say. But yeah, firstly, we'll get into the updates with the cost cap thing with Red Bull. Just want to say quickly though, I am going to be recording this little topic because I want to upload it on the channel tomorrow for people who unfortunately cannot tune in to the stream this evening. So I will be recording it. Shouldn't be too long of a topic, to be honest. We haven't had, an absolute mountain of updates to this whole story, but we have had some key developments, and it looks as though, and you'll see this once we actually get into it, it looks as though we are very much nearing the end of this saga, which is good to see. And we should get some sort of announcement, probably at next weekend's, or this weekend, sorry, Mexico City Grand Prix. It would be nice if they announced something on the Thursday or Friday before we actually got into the action on the Saturday or Sunday, but we'll see exactly when they do announce things. But yeah, we'll get into it in a moment. So yeah, just want to let you guys know I'm going to be recording it. And obviously, if you miss any part of it, or if you want to rewatch it tomorrow, then this recording, which will be uploaded as a video tomorrow, will be up on the channel at 6 p.m. UK time tomorrow. Just letting you guys know that. So, right. I think we will just get straight into it, guys. So, of course, the Red Bull cost cap saga is still ongoing, and there has been further updates to this whole situation. Let's now get into it after there was a few developments to this story at the US Grand Prix. Now, let's start with this firstly, and this came out on the Thursday of the US Grand Prix, and this was a tweet from Andrew Benson about how the FIA had made an offer to Red Bull for the terms of an accepted breach agreement for them breaching the cost cap. Details, as Andrew is saying with this tweet, as with all issues on this matter, are confidential for now. Now Red Bull have to decide whether to accept or go before a adjudication panel. Now, we'll get more so in a moment into what the punishment possibly is or could be that the FIA has offered to Red Bull in terms of this accepted breach agreement. What an accepted breach agreement is, basically, is the FIA notify Red Bull, look, this is the punishment that we are going to give you, and that, if Red Bull accept that decision and go into that agreement, then I believe everything stays confidential, but the punishment will be known as to this whole, them breaching the cost cap. But if Red Bull decide to go to the adjudication panel, then things would become more public, and Red Bull, if they were still given a punishment by that panel, they would have to accept it at that point. But that came out on the Thursday, but we still didn't have any details, or we weren't really any closer to certain details about how much had they overspent by, what did it go on, what was the offer that the FIA made to Red Bull with this accepted breach agreement. Let's now get into some of that here. Now, firstly, I'm going to start off with this Autosport article, which for this video, I will have a link to this article in the description if you want to go and give it a read. It's a very good one from Autosport that they put out on Thursday evening, I believe. It was either Thursday or Friday evening. I think it might have been Thursday evening in the UK. And in this article where they talk about the whole Red Bull cost cap situation, they get into what they believe is, how much they overspent by, and they get into what they think it went on. So let me read some of this article. It says, the overall figure involved is believed to be around $1.8 million, which, it may say later on in that article, which puts the offence well within the minor breach limit of 5% over the cap, or just over $7 million. But $1.8 million is not minor. That is a lot of money to be going over by. And, if you did spend it purely on car development, you would gain a lot of lap time spending that amount of money. But it goes on to say, the team appears to have fallen foul of several areas of the FIA's financial regulations, which have been regularly updated by amendments that have not been published on its website or made public. Very important to remember that part of the article, because the FIA, as it goes into, further detail in this article, they've made amendments to their financial regulations, but they've not actually published it, I don't believe, on its website and, on the actual regulations on its website. So that is key to remember in going through this article, as it goes on to say, one is the allocation of the cost of catering at the factory and at the track. In addition, There are believed to be redundancy and sick pay issues related to key employees. A subject more directly involved to the cost of running the cars is the allocation of the value of unused spare parts. This is where things get a bit more interesting, as it goes on to say they were passed to the Heritage Department at the end of the season for use on show cars and any testing of the 2021 model in 2022, which falls outside of the cap restrictions. And then it goes on to say in the bottom three lines, or not 3 lines, but more than that, just the bottom bit here, it's understood that the FIA issued a clarification in June this year, 3 months after teams submitted their documents about how such parts were to be considered by teams. I'll get more into that in a second. And then it goes on to say, finally, there is also a UK-specific tax issue, which is believed to be similar to a procedural breach involving Aston Martin. And then goes on to say, if Horner does speak on Friday, he's expected to give further details on the team's position in all areas. Now, when it says about how, when it gets into the cost of running the cars, is an allocation of value, or the value of unused spare parts. And then it goes on to say, it is understood that the FIA issued a clarification in June of 2022 this year, 3 months after the team submitted the financial documents about how such parts were to be considered by teams. Basically, what that means is Red Bull, based on what the rules were in the late part of 2021, they believe, and it appears by the regulations, were doing the right thing in terms of unused spare parts, because you can see in this article it says they were passed to the Heritage Department at the end of the season for use on show cars and any testing of the 2021 model in 2022. And again, it says which falls outside the cap restrictions. So Red Bull, at the time of doing that, if that is indeed what they did, and I have to stress as well, this article, obviously the people writing this article, they will be a lot closer to the people who are in the know about this situation, so they're a lot closer to the truth than people like me. But, they don't know still for sure what is actually going on. So this is, the closest thing really we've got to the full facts of the situation. But if it is true that, Red Bull, had unused spare parts and they were passed to the Heritage Department for use on show cars and, any testing on the 2021 model, as it says there, and then the FIA, a few months later and 3 months after the teams have submitted their documents, issue a clarification, which is essentially a change in the regulations in this area, then I don't see what Red Bull really could have done about this. It's really the FIA's fault. The FIA should, stop issuing clarifications and should just be, very clear and black and white with, what is and isn't allowed. And if that is what has caused, and maybe the majority of why Red Bull have gone over the cap, then you can't really, if this is true as to why, or the reason why Red Bull have gone over the cap, you can't really blame Red Bull massively for this. This is more of an FIA issue, and I've got to say, the FIA, no surprise, have acted pretty poorly in this whole saga, which I'll get onto a bit more in a moment. But if that is true, this whole unused spare part thing and the FIA issuing a clarification after it was too late, then I think the FIA is more at fault there than Red Bull, I have to say. But now let me get into an Automotor and Sport article, which gets into some more details about the possible punishment and what is going to happen with Red Bull going forward. Now, this article, I believe, came out on the Friday of the Grand Prix weekend, maybe the Saturday morning. Not entirely sure exactly when the article came out, but it was definitely before, I believe, qualifying got underway in Austin. And this is what they had to say. And of course, Automotor and Sport, They are very reliable in their reporting. I think they were the first to report this whole thing. Red Bull and Aston Martin being over the cap for 2021 before the FIA even confirmed what was going on. And of course, they have plenty of people quite close to the people in the know. So some of their information does actually turn out to be the absolute truth. So let's read some of their article, which I'll as well post in the description of this video. So what it says here is the more interesting part happened off the track. Everything revolved around Red Bull's offence in the budget cap affair. The racing team has known for a week what punishment it faces. Allegedly, they say, a deduction of 25% of the wind tunnel time for the coming season, plus a fine. Apparently, so if I go back to this tweet, confirming the news that the FIA had made an offer to Red Bull for the terms of an accepted breach agreement. That is basically what this article is saying, is that is what the offer was in terms of a punishment. A 25% reduction in wind tunnel time for next year, plus a probably sizable but nothing major type of fine. So that's basically confirming what the offer was there by the FIA. And then it goes on to say a retroactive punishment with a point deduction for 2021 should be off the table. Red Bull, though, is said to have disagreed with the cost cap administrator's proposal. The process then continues. And then it goes on to say, in Austin, team boss Christian Horner contacted FIA President Mohammed bin Sulayem, supposedly to make him a counter-suggestion as to what punishment one could live with, which I've got to say, this whole, the FIA trying to negotiate a punishment with the team that have broken the rules is so wrong. It is totally wrong, and it just does scream, unfortunately, corruption. If a team has broken the rules, there should not be any room for negotiation with that team that has broken the rules as to what their punishment is going to be. The FIA, they are the regulators of Formula One. They should be, giving Red Bull what they think is the appropriate punishment, and then Red Bull have to accept it. There should be no room for negotiation. This is just, a really terrible thing that I've seen with this whole situation. And then it goes on to say, on the outside, this gives the impression that guilt and atonement can be negotiated like in a bazaar. I'm not quite sure what that means, but obviously converted from German to English, this article. And it says, however, Ben Sulayem can at best act as a neutral observer in the matter. The process is entirely in the hands of independent examiners and judges should a hearing occur when the two parties cannot agree. Apparently, Horner can't decide for himself how he wants to either. The scope of the case is so great that the Mateschitz family must be consulted in any case. Of course, when this article was published, I think it was a day later when it was announced, sadly, that Dietrich Mateschitz had passed away. And of course, rest in peace to him. But that's how serious this whole case is. And then it goes on to say, finally, this is not just about the Formula One team, but the image of the brand. This has reportedly already led to some delays. From the FIA's point of view, it is up to Red Bull how quickly the process ends. If an agreement is reached with the cost cap administrator, the file can be closed immediately. If it goes to court, the matter can drag on for another 6 months. So that's what it has to say there. And they also, I think in a different article, went on to say, maybe the day after this other article came out, that the FIA and Red Bull reportedly have agreed or come to an agreement on the punishment, but because of the news about Dietrich Mateschitz's sad death, they decided to postpone the announcement. So we are probably going to get an announcement, and I really hope we do get an announcement at the Mexico City Grand Prix this weekend, say in, 3 or 4 days from now. That would be ideal, to be honest. But again, I really don't like this whole negotiating, the FIA, the people that run the sport, negotiating with a team that has broken the rules as to what the punishment should be. It doesn't, it unfortunately in this case is working like that, but it should not work like that. if you look at other instances in F1, where, for example, the stewards will give penalties to certain drivers and teams. Yes, they bring those drivers and teams in to hear their side of the story, but they don't negotiate with them what the penalty or punishment should be. They hear their side of the story, and then they give whatever punishment they think is fair. That is how it is supposed to work in F1. But yeah, this just screams of corruption, unfortunately. And yeah, that's all of the updates pretty much we have had to this story so far. And we hope this weekend in Mexico, we will get further updates to this. Let me know, guys, in the comment section down below. What do you think should be the appropriate punishment for Red Bull, given the information I just went through there? And just what do you think of this whole situation so far? Let me know in the comment section down below, guys. But until my next video, it's been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye. Right, so that, guys, is the topic done with. And I'll now come back to this. So what I want you guys to do is let me know right now in the live chat what you think of all of that information I just went through, such as the rumor is that they went over by $1.8 million, and that it went on, what was it, catering, sick pay, and what was the other one? Unused parts, I think, was the crux of that Autosport article. Which, again, I don't see how Red Bull, if that's what they're, going to be punished for, I don't see how that's fair, because the FIA, made their clarification after all the teams submitted their documents. So, yeah, that doesn't seem very fair. But again, those are rumors. We don't actually know if, what was reported in those articles. We don't actually know if if that is the absolute truth. So we will have to see when we get to maybe this weekend or further down the line with this whole situation. But yeah, let me know in the chat, guys, what you thought of what I just went through there. And I'll come to you guys in the chat in a moment. Just want to remove all of this stuff from my OBS software, so obviously things can run a bit quicker. And we won't go on to that yet, because that's what we're going on to next. But yeah, let's see what you guys have to say in the live chat. Just want to say, though, don't forget, guys, if you are new to the channel, to subscribe for more content like this, because I will be covering every session for this weekend's Mexico City Grand Prix. I'll be first live for the weekend preview on the Thursday at 6 PM UK time, and then, yeah, doing a practice 1 watch along, practice 2 watch along, practice 3 qualifying and race watch along, with also a qualifying preview on the Saturday before we get into practice 3 and qualifying, and then a race preview on the Sunday before we get into the race watch along itself. So yeah, make sure to join me for all of that content this weekend. Bottom right of the screen, you can subscribe to the channel right there. And there from watching right now, don't forget to smash that like button. Obviously help the channel grow. But just having a look on Twitter to see if there's any F1 news. You never know, F1 news could just appear at any moment. And no, can't see anything at the moment. And let me now look to see what you guys have to say in the chat. I'll quickly read out firstly these comments by Ewok. He posted 3 comments before the stream went live, and he had to say, I have loved F1 so much over the past 35 plus years, but I think it's soon time for a divorce. Breaks my heart to admit it. Nothing against Red Bull. I actually respect them for what they have accomplished. Since taking over the falling or failing Jaguar team, they've had success with Vettel's dominance and gone through many years of pain with the introduction of the V6 hybrid engine. Sorry. Jesus Christ, my throat cutting out. Let me read that again. They have gone through many years of pain with the introduction of the V6 hybrid power units. They're now back on top. You can't doubt their fighting ability to get back to the pinnacle of F1. They've had some good luck, but that's what you need sometimes to be a success. But cheating isn't right in any sport. And by the way, hello to everyone in chat. Good to see you all here. Jordan H says they'll accept same as Ferrari did a few years back. No one other than Red Bull ever know what the overspend is. Impossible to determine from the outside. We can speculate all day. Well, I think if Red Bull disagree with what you call it, if they disagree with the punishment that the FIA have offered, then I think if they do go to the adjudication panel, then I think the details become more so public. So we could know that way, but it appears they have come to some sort of agreement. Prank says the FIA writes rules with holes and always say they found a loophole. Doesn't even know how to follow their own rules. Crystal Racing says, what a surprise, FIA can't police the sport properly. And also says, someone wrote this to Tomo, but they said the punishment should be Red Bull pays the same amount of money they overspent every team on the grid. So overspend by $1 million, everyone gets $1 million. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's a punishment you could do, but, you know, looking at the regulations, obviously, that's not within the regulations. That's not one of the punishments possible. But, you know, could they introduce that in the future as a possible punishment? Yeah, definitely. But would that actually be a punishment for them? Let's say if that was a punishment on the table that the FIA could, use, would it actually make a difference to Red Bull? I'm not sure it really would, because I mean, yeah, some teams with an extra $1 million, it would make a bit of a difference, but some teams it wouldn't really make a massive difference, to be honest. Jordan H says that doesn't solve anything unless you added the money to the team's cap next year. The $1 million doesn't do anything on its own. And Crystal Racing says there's no point in stripping Max and Red Bull of their titles. They allowed Schumi to win in 1994 despite his antics and his illegal car, and they allowed Ferrari to force Michelin to change their tyre size back in 2003. Yeah, it's not in the FIA's, you know, they haven't set a precedent of doing that, of, you know, stripping world championships after the matter. Because like you say, Michael Schumacher in 94, his car, even though they couldn't prove it was illegal, it was illegal. It was an illegal car because it was running, if I remember correctly, because they did a whole investigation report on it, I don't think they could find traction control, but they did find launch control, but they couldn't prove that they used it. So that's why they got away with it that season. But if you go back and watch the starts of those races, Michael Schumacher's car definitely had launch control in 1994. And then, in that 2003 season, Ferrari were, you know, on the back foot massively, and then they forced Michelin to change their, was it tyre dimensions or something? And then that, you know, really helped in the last 3 races of the season. Even though it wasn't just that helped them win the championship in 03. Jordan H says, the real problem is everyone signed onto these rules and accepted them. Then they were broken. Now the teams want the penalties increased. Prank says, FIA has been making up rules as they go to keep teams happy. They made this bed. FIA trying to save face. Tandem says, if the FIA is changing the rules in another year after the spending has occurred and punishing me, then I would absolutely take it to court and fight it. Yeah. If that is indeed what the, what's triggered this, then I don't see how Red Bull is in the wrong or should be punished for this. They were within the regulations at the time. And, you know, when they submitted the documents, you know, the FIA, not until 3 months after, actually were like, oh, no, you can't actually do that. So yeah, it is totally wrong. It is totally wrong. And if that Autosport article we went through, if it turns out that that is actually the truth, that what caused Red Bull to be over the cap, then really this whole Saga controversy has been something about nothing, really. And it's more about the FIA's incompetence, which we know the FIA is incompetent. They've been incompetent for a long time. But yeah, it's just such a... It's so sad we have such a terrible organization running Formula One, because they're just so awful at their job, so incompetent, so bureaucratic, I guess you could say, and at times corrupt. So yeah, it's just terrible, really. Ibanez Triple says breaking of sports rules equals cheating. If someone cheats to win, they should have their wins removed. Hold on, Mark. Where is it? Let me just scroll back up. Mark Weishar, I think it is. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. Says, negotiation, what the fuck? You're the government of the series, lord and ruler. To say your negotiation with the cheaters totally seems corrupted and could end F1. I mean, it's not going to end F1, but it is definitely corruption. I don't see how anyone, even Red Bull fans, could actually sit there and say that that isn't corrupt. It really, really is. I mean, do we see any other sports do this? I mean, maybe there's other instances of it happening, but those other instances may also just be corruption. But yeah, it should not work like that. How it should work is, you know, if they've been found to be over and it's, you know, legitimate, the overspend that they have committed, then, you know, the FIA should just simply give them a punishment, and then, you know, the team has to accept it. And if they don't want to accept it, then tough luck. And if they want to quit F1 because of it, then go ahead. But negotiation should not be a possibility with this whole thing. Crystal Racing says they should lose their penalties, but the FIA don't want Red Bull walking out and they want to protect the show. Plus, they have no confidence in anyone else challenging Merc and Ferrari soon. And also, Crystal says, F1 keeps saying this is the end of F1 every time a scandal occurs, but the masses keep turning in anyway. Negotiating with the FIA is sadly part of the game. You are right, it is sadly part of the game, but we've got to try and not move on, but just be better than this. Because, you know, with so many more fans now interested in Formula One and so many more eyes on F1, period, it's, you know, it's vital that the sport has as much integrity as possible. And Crystal Racing also saying not having Kimi around is making thoughts of not watching F1 anymore more frequent. I've been watching for 20 years and I'm bored of the politics. Yeah. It is very annoying, but like you say, it's F1. That's F1, unfortunately. And hello to McLaren F1 Race, by the way, saying thank God Chaz is on, save me from watching the lackluster presenters on Any Driven Monday. Cheers for that. I'm not actually sure who is on Any Driven Monday. I know that Naomi Schiff is normally one of the presenters, but I know Tomo was on there. Was it 3-4 weeks ago? I think. But yeah. Cheers for tuning in. Sparky Pete, good to see you, says the problem is they overspent, which helped in development before the engine and battery homologation. Now they'll have that advantage until 2026 with all the freezes. I mean, if that actually has gone on development though, then yeah, it will definitely have, benefited them a lot. But if it is true that the extra, money they spent was on unused spare parts, then I don't see how they should be punished for that. I mean, yeah, technically speaking, it is towards car development, but if it's not been used and it's a spare part, and again, at the time, the FIA said that it was fine, and then suddenly in the summer, 3 months after they submitted their documents, changed their mind, I don't see how Red Bull should be punished for that at the end of the day, but yeah. Prank says, launch control and traction control run off the same sensors. You could turn one on and have both. Right, okay. Tandem says, yeah, but Ferrari kept everything for that year and hide findings. Yeah, for 2019. That was another very bad moment for F1. And again, very corrupt. As I said, was it couple days ago I said this? I am sure that Ferrari's backdoor agreement with the FIA in regards to their 2019 illegal power unit, I am sure it had nothing to do with with FIA president at the time being Jean Todt. I repeat, I am sure it had nothing to do with the FIA president being Jean Todt. Just need to remember, or just need to make sure that I state that clearly. Dogcat says, but the sport has integrity. It's just new fans and Drive to Survive fans want the sport to lose integrity by stripping Max of his titles retroactively for an incredibly minor breach of the rules. Alonso and Hamilton were allowed to fight for the championship despite Crashgate. This is nothing compared. It wasn't Crashgate. It was Spygate, you mean, not Crashgate, with back in 2007. I mean, the sport has maybe more integrity than it did, I don't know, 15 years ago when Spygate happened, but I don't think it has total integrity. And, I'm not sat here saying we need to strip Max of his championships and Red Bull of their championships, but and this isn't just for Red Bull. This goes for everyone. You should not be negotiating with a team that has broken the rules as to what their punishment should be. That is corruption. End of story. If that happened in any sport, I would say the same. When, for example, someone is found to be taking performance-enhancing drugs, the drug agencies or whatever they're called, they don't negotiate with the athlete what the punishment should be. They come to their own conclusions and they deal out the punishment. Same with football for, I don't know, red card, tackles or offences. And same in other sports. And that's how it should work. Negotiating with the team that's breaking the rules as to what the punishment should be is, that's not a sport that has as much integrity as it should. At the end of the day, Sparky Pizzas on Red Bull, I'm sure, has connections with Autosport. They have the hottest driver at the minute for the next 12 years. It would make sense to stay in Red Bull's favour. This can be a conspiracy, so can Autosport articles. I mean, yeah, there's always that possibility that, they could be working on behalf of Red Bull if they've got people at Autosport that are, secretly big fans of Red Bull or Max Verstappen. Yeah, that's definitely possible, but I don't think that's the case here. I think Autosport normally are pretty sound with what they report. I wouldn't say that they are the best media company in reporting F1 news. I think, again, now Automotor und Sport from Germany is the best F1 publication I have seen for reporting news, and they are normally the most accurate. But I don't think that's the case, but it's definitely possible. Let me see if there's any more comments I can read out. Cheers for that, by the way. Jordan H. He says Chazza Tomo over Tomo. Hello to Loud Gorilla, by the way. Good to see you. Darth Lord Raven says George Russell only penalty 5 seconds. That's absurd, is it not? I really have some empathy for Sainz. He was out. Talking of that, let's get into it, because I want to go through the incident and firstly show how it happened. So here we are on board with George Russell into turn 1. So Verstappen, you can see on the left-hand side, just ahead of Russell, is ahead of Sainz into turn 1. Verstappen is in the lead. Carlos Sainz at this point is now just trying to probably do a switchback on Verstappen on the exit of turn 1 to get a better run on Max and try and get the lead back of the US Grand Prix. Russell at this point, he's on the inside of turn 1, the less grippy side, but he's had a better start to the race than Lewis Hamilton, so he's keen obviously to get up to 3rd after starting in 4th. And you can see at this point, Lewis Hamilton, and you can see his Lewis Hamilton's front left tyre there, just to the right of Russell's car. Hamilton now, because he's on the racing line, the grippier line, he's now starting to go right round the outside of Russell. But Russell is very keen to be like, no, I need to keep this position and I want to get ahead of my teammate and into 3rd and try and be Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz's main challenger in this race today. And he was so desperate in keeping this position that, as you can see, if you look at Russell's left front tyre, I didn't, add effects in or anything. That's actually smoke, that white thing, that smoke coming from his left front tyre as he was now locking up. And the reason he was locking up is because he was trying his best to brake as late as possible to push Hamilton more to the outside of turn 1 so Russell could have the grippier line on the inside and take 3rd place. But because he locked up, I think, a couple times slightly, what it did was, even though he hit the apex, it sent him way too fast through the corner and sent him way too quickly to the exit of turn 1 than he ideally would have wanted. Meaning that as Carlos Sainz was now trying to get that better exit off turn 1 to get ahead of Verstappen, maybe into turn 2 and 3, Russell was now going to hit Carlos Sainz, because Russell had essentially gone almost straight on at the first corner because he had that lockup. And you can see with Russell steering here, he's steering as much as he can to avoid Carlos Sainz, but because of that lockup, there's nothing he can do at this point. And you can see that Carlos Sainz is going to come across him. And then at this point is where contact is made. And then obviously he hit Carlos Sainz, and then Carlos Sainz was out of the Grand Prix. Russell would get a 5-second time penalty. I just want to, though, go back to this picture because, maybe there's people out there saying, well, Russell had the inside line and Sainz, turned across him. At this point, Russell, he's not racing Carlos Sainz. He's racing Lewis Hamilton. He's not racing Carlos Sainz, because Sainz, you can see, is pretty far ahead of him. And the only reason Russell gets alongside Carlos is because of this lockup that sends him into this position where he's, right alongside him. So clearly it was Russell's fault, locking up, going too deep and slamming into Carlos Sainz. Should have been given a harsher penalty than a 5-second penalty. Should have been, I think, really at least a drive-through penalty, which would have cost him about 15 seconds. He still would have finished in 5th place, but it would have been a more deserving penalty rather than what we saw here. Or rather than, what he got for what we saw in this incident. I will quickly, though, just delete these pictures, because we're now going to go on to the second racing incident that I want to look at. Let me know in the chat, though, guys. What did you think of this incident? What do you think the penalty should have been for Russell rather than a 5-second penalty? Or do you think the 5 seconds penalty was justified? And also, because Russell has had a few accidents lately, what do you think of George Russell's driving at the minute? Because I think he's driving a bit poor at the minute, is Russell. And he's performing a lot worse than he was earlier this season. There's no doubt about that. Let me know in the chat what you think about this. But now we'll quickly go on to the Alonso Stroll incident. Lance Stroll has been given a penalty for this whole incident, which I'll get into in a second. So you can see here on the restart of the race after the first safety car, Alonso is having pitted under the safety car on fresh tyres, fresher tyres than Stroll, and softer. Was it on softer tyres? No, actually, they're on the same compound of tyre. But Alonso, out of turn 11, onto the back straight, has got a great run on Stroll, right in the slipstream, and we know the Alpine is a lot quicker than the Aston Martin in a straight line. And at this point, as he gets as close as he can, grabs all the slipstream he can, he's now, as you can see with the steering wheel, he's starting to veer to the left so he can pull out the slipstream and obviously do the overtake into turn 12. But at this point, you can see that Alonso, despite turning more so to the left, Lance Stroll has very slightly come over to the middle of the track to block Alonso, but he's done it too late, and of course, that's what led to this. Alonso, the front end of his car going up in the air, and thankfully, he hit the ground before he hit the barrier, unless, or else, sorry, it would have been very similar to Robert Kubica's crash in Canada in 2007, but the best way to determine how Stroll is at fault for this incident is look at Stroll's car and look at the distance between his right rear tyre and the white line, the edge of the track on the right hand side. There's not that much room. I mean, there's a tiny bit of room, or not a tiny bit, a bit of room, but not a whole lot. But if you look at this second image, you can see the amount of distance between Stroll's right rear tyre and the white line of the track is a tad more than it was with this picture. So pretty clear to see that Stroll has made that movement to the middle of the track, and that's why he is clearly at fault for this incident, moving way too late. And to be honest, he should have got a more severe penalty than he actually did. He has been given a 3-place grid penalty for this weekend's Mexico City Grand Prix, which honestly, I would have given him a 10-place penalty for this weekend, because I thought what he did was poor, very poor for someone of his quality. And if it was at a different circuit, he could have legitimately, seriously injured or killed Alonso with this accident. So, yeah, I don't think the punishment really was strong enough here with Stroll. Thankfully, Alonso was all okay after this. He didn't hit the barriers as hard maybe as he was expecting to when he was at this point with his front end up in the air, but he would eventually, despite some damage to his car, come through to finish in 7th. But as I'll get on to soon, that has now become 15th for the overall race results, as he was given a 30-second penalty for something that I will get into later on. And I'll just remove these pictures from the OBS software. And with the Alonso penalty, we'll get into that in a second. But guys, let me know what you thought of those two incidents. Do you think Lance Stroll should have got, like I said, a harsher penalty, or do you think the penalty for Mexico is just about right? And for the Russell Sainz incident, what did you think of that? And do you think Russell should have got a more severe penalty? And let me know what you think of Russell's driving, I guess, as of late. Because, like I said, it's not been very good this year. It has been good this year, but it just hasn't been good as of late. The last 3 races especially have been pretty poor from him. But I'm hoping before the end of the season we will see an improvement, because he is a very good driver. He's just not really performing as well as we know he can. As we saw how good he was earlier in the season, especially compared to his teammate Lewis Hamilton. Crystal Racing says Russell's racecraft is poor. I wouldn't say poor, but it's definitely quite a level below, you know, Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Alonso, Vettel. It's quite a level below that, but I wouldn't say it's poor. I think there's drivers with worse racecraft on the grid, to be honest. I'd say Magnussen still has worse racecraft because Magnussen still has, as we've seen, he does crash into people still quite a lot. And then, yeah, Russell's had a couple silly incidents as of late, and he's had a few silly ones this year, but I don't think it's overall, in general, I don't think his racecraft is poor. But if he wants to win world championships in the future, it needs a lot of work, that is for sure. Crystal says, Russell should have slowed down more. He also keeps blaming other drivers despite his own recklessness. He's so entitled. He did initially blame Carlos Sainz, but he did, after the race, once I think he saw the replay, he went to apologise to Sainz and Ferrari in the Ferrari motorhome. Sorry. So, yeah, that was good to see. But, yeah, definitely needs to change things up with how he does things. Snow Lion says drive-through penalty, lousy driver right now. Jordan H says drive-through. Michelle K says an extra stop-go penalty. That's I think the harshest penalty you can give to a driver in a race without, you know, it being a black flag disqualification. But to be honest, if they did give him that in the race, I wouldn't have complained. Because, you know, what he did eliminated someone from the race. Hello to Jane Swinnerton. Good to see you. He says, hello, fellow F1 fans. Crystals Racing says, Stroll has been driving since 2017 and still drives like an F3 rookie. Mirrors? What mirrors? I'm too good for that because I'm Sir Lancelot. Yeah, that move, and what was it? I saw a tweet from Dario Franchitti, who used to be was he an IndyCar driver for a while? Dario, and I think isn't he related in some way to Paul di Resta as well? Is Dario? But he tweeted that the FIA needs to clamp down on this because he said that it's happening a lot in younger Formula as well, and it is. What we've seen, I don't know who started it. I don't know if it was Michael Schumacher who started it, or maybe the drivers after him. But we've had this new, or maybe it was Max Verstappen, because obviously he did it a couple times with Kimi Räikkönen a few years ago. But we have seen this this new tactic of moving as another car behind you moves out of your slipstream to try and overtake you, moving at the same time, which is so dangerous, especially if you're going at, 300 plus kilometers an hour, which obviously Alonso and Stroll at that point would have been pretty much. So, yeah, they do need to clamp down on it, but there's plenty of things, unfortunately, with the FIA and their rule book. There's plenty of things that they need to clamp down on, not just that. So, yeah, there needs to be really a real review of the rule book, and just a lot of things need to be looked at, because, yeah, the rule book in F1 isn't great when it comes to, the penalties for certain driving mistakes and other things as well to do with the running of F1. Yeah. Rory Keegan says Russell completely overcooked it because he's so desperate to beat Lewis. Team will be furious with him, definitely. McLaren F1 races, maybe George has taken over the mantle from Bottas as Mercedes chief 10-pin bowler. Yeah. Obviously, we saw that at Bottas in Hungary last year. Crystal Racing says, I hope Alonso destroys Stroll so much in 2023 that it forces Dad to say enough is enough. Snowline says Stroll is a national embarrassment for us Canadians. Race ban for Stroll. I'm sick of his inconsistency and lame excuses. And Snowline making a great point that there's no consistencies with penalties nowadays. Very disconcerting. Yeah. The problem with the FIA is, you know, let's say there are 2 or 3 incidents that are similar in how they happened or the effect of what happened. The FIA will, you know, not punish all 3 of those, whatever incidents, the same. And then, you know, when they are consistent, the FIA, it's when they shouldn't be consistent. So, yeah, that's, you know, just a terrible thing we've seen with the FIA. Not just, you know, this year, not just during the Michael Massey period when he was race director, but it's been a thing for at least a few years now. Thundernut 6, I think it is, or Thundernut 6 says the honeymoon is over with Russell, definitely. Love Gorilla obviously saying Russell is in his bad books as he is a Ferrari fan. No surprise there. Crystal Racing says Russell is pretty good at strategy and running in clear air, but he can be Vettelish or Grosjean-ish at times. Well, I said yesterday, didn't I, that he does remind me a lot of like a British version of Sebastian Vettel. Very quick in qualifying. When he's in clear air, you know, very good, very quick, no problem. But when he does race other cars, you don't fancy him as much, you know, coming out on top in those battles, as you would other drivers like your Verstappens, Hamiltons, Leclercs, Alonso's, even maybe Carlos Sainz's. So, yeah, it's a big thing he needs to work on, because if he does contend for a championship, he's most likely going to have to go up against a Verstappen or a Leclerc or even a Hamilton to win it. And he's going to have to, you know, really improve on that area, because, you know, he's not going to win a championship unless, of course, he gets a similar situation like Sebastian did in his career a couple times, where the car is so quick and his teammate is, whoever it is at the time, is just a level below him, that he has an easy ride most of the time to race wins in the World Championship. If that doesn't happen, then he's not going to be able to, you know, win a championship in an equal situation within a team or equal car to, say, another car in terms of pace, like a Red Bull with Max Verstappen. He's not going to be able to win a championship without overtaking Verstappen. So, yeah, needs to improve. Rory Keegan says, being harsh on Stroll, he has allowed one move and that was it. The move wasn't huge, and Alonso, bless him, did leave pulling out very late. Not clever from either. I will say with that incident, yeah, Alonso should have probably pulled out the slipstream later, but I don't think Alonso actually did anything wrong. Yeah, in hindsight, he should have pulled out the slipstream quicker, but I don't think that's actually, you know, a bad thing, what he did. If Stroll had stayed exactly where he was, it wouldn't have happened. So, yeah. And, I mean, yeah, Stroll, he did make that one move, which you are allowed, but it was just too late at the end of the day. Sparky Pete says, Russell's fault, drive-through penalty should have happened. Russell knows now, without luck, he has to get in front of Lewis at the start to have a chance now. Hamilton is in good form at the minute. Yeah, really, since the, 9th race of the season in Canada, Lewis Hamilton has been pretty comfortably better than Russell this season, except for the odd race at, Spa. I mean, Russell beat Hamilton in the Dutch Grand Prix, but I don't actually think he was better than Hamilton. I think Hamilton was screwed over with the strategy there as to why he lost to Russell and lost that Grand Prix. And then, did get the podium at Monza and finish ahead of Hamilton, but Hamilton outqualified him, but then Hamilton had to start from the back because of a penalty. So, yeah. Hamilton has been better than Russell this season. I think that's pretty clear to see. And as we'll get onto later with the championship standings, and we'll look at, how they look now after the US Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton is not too far away from his teammate now, and I think 4th place in the championship for Hamilton is definitely possible. Labgura says, I think Elkin will fire Binotto next season when he realises that we're going nowhere at all. Honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Elkin... well, I think he cares, but I don't think he actually... has enough knowledge to know what the right thing is that they need to do, to be honest. Snowline says, in my opinion, Stroll is nothing but a spoiled, entitled rich kid who shouldn't even be allowed to drive a grocery cart in a supermarket. Disgusting. I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, it was poor from Stroll, and I was really disappointed with that from him. Not just because it was, it could have led to something really bad, but he had such a good weekend up until that point. And Aston Martin would now be 6th in the championship if he didn't do that. Even if he had lost out to Alonso in the race, they still would have got a lot of points to get ahead of Alfa Romeo into 6th place. So, yeah. Labgrid says FIA is useful as the UN. Let me see if I can find some other comments quick. Snowline says neither of the Canadian drivers are fit for purpose. In my opinion, they're just rich brats. If they couldn't surf on their daddy's money, they wouldn't even be fit to sweep the track. Let's not go, that far. I mean, Stroll and Latifi, they are very good racing drivers. They're not maybe, well, I think Latifi, to be honest, has done well to have the careers he has had in F1 because, let's be honest, he's never been one of the 20 best drivers in the world, which is what Formula 1 is supposedly supposed to be. And yeah, with Lance Stroll, yeah, he's probably had more opportunities than he's probably deserved. But he has had, I'd say, a good F1 career so far. But, and there's definitely many things he can improve on. We have to remember as well, he is only 23 years old still. So, he's got time to work on things. But, Lance is good enough for F1. There's no doubt about that. It's just, he just has these moments occasionally. But, they're getting less and less with Stroll. Darth Lord Raven, 3 races to go. Will Verstappen get 14, 15 or 16 wins, which really crushes the record of Schumacher and Vettel? Yeah. Max Verstappen, as you can see on the bottom ticker, yesterday with his win has now equaled the record for the most wins in a Formula 1 season. The record is now held by 3 drivers. Again, Max Verstappen, Michael Schumacher in 2004, and Sebastian Vettel in 2013. Max will break the record. There's no doubt about it. There's 3 races to go. He's definitely going to win this weekend, in my view, in Mexico, because he's already won this race 3 times before in cars that were not as probably good as the car he's got this year. So, yeah, I think Max wins the Grand Prix this weekend, and then probably wins in Brazil as well. And, yeah, Abu Dhabi, I'd probably say as well. Which would be, that'd be, 16 wins out of 22 races. An incredible record. I gotta say, though, that, what do you call it? If, what am I talking about? Yeah, with Max Verstappen, breaking the record, that's all well and great, but I still think Michael Schumacher's 13 wins in 2004 were more impressive than if Max wins, say, 15 of the 22 races this season. And the reason I say that with Michael is because there was 18 races in 2004. and Michael won 13 of them. And that, for me, again, is more impressive than, say, 15 wins in 22 races. And I know, obviously, Michael had an amazing car that year, and it was way quicker than everything else. But, yeah, less races with that amount of wins is still very, very impressive. Let me see if I can find a final comment to read before we go on to a couple more bits of news that I want to go through. Lab Gorilla says they need me at Ferrari to be the team leader. I'll make everyone wear those sweet yellow suits and bring in Vettel and Alonso. And Jordan H says Stroll is just missing the fear of failure since he's a billionaire's son. That's why he fails to improve or learn. Definitely doesn't help with Stroll. That I think this is not just an F1 thing, but I think it's also a thing in life, isn't it? Where if you've got a cushion to fall back on in terms of money, safety in life, then you don't necessarily perform as well as you would, you know, if you were a lot closer to, I wouldn't say death, but do you know what I mean? A lot closer to going bankrupt, I guess, financially or just in life. And I think, well, people tend to be, I think the more successful and better people in life tend to be the ones that, you know, have that element of danger to their lives, that, you know, if they do fuck up with whatever jobs they're working in, that there is actually consequences rather than, yeah, falling back into a mountain of cash or anything like that. But let me now get on to the next topic. And the next topic we're going to go on to, let me just find it quickly. I bookmarked the page. I'm just trying to find it. And I'll just get up on screen. Right. So, let me just as well zoom in on this page so you guys can see it a bit better. So, this is a statement or an article on the FIA website that I want to go through. FIA to implement procedural measures based on the findings of the review into the incidents at the 2022 Japanese Grand Prix. And thorough review was overseen by FIA Deputy President for Sport Robert Reid. So let's get into what this is all about and the measures, as it says there, that have been adopted as a result of the findings. So, let's now get to, race start. So they say, although it was raining, conditions were suitable enough to start the race from a standing start on time, which I would agree with. I think looking back in hindsight, the decision to start the race was the best one. It was just, the rain coming down a lot harder right after the race started was just, really shit timing. And then they go on to say all teams started on intermediate tyres following reconnaissance laps to the grid, but heavier rain around the time of the start meant that car control on intermediate tyres was more challenging. And now let's get into the deployment of recovery vehicles and marshals, because of course that was a big talking point from the Japanese Grand Prix. They say the review concluded that all FIA race procedures were followed. After the incident involving the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz at turn 12, the track was neutralised with a safety car before marshals and recovery vehicles were deployed on track. The review noted that in such conditions, a recovery vehicle should not be deployed unless all cars are aligned behind the safety car. Furthermore, marshals and recovery equipment would only be deployed whilst cars are on track when the weather conditions and location of the cars to be recovered allow for a quick and safe intervention. I gotta say I disagree with that part. When they say a recovery vehicle should not be deployed unless all cars are behind the safety car. Recovery vehicles, even when all cars are behind the safety car and in that, whole line behind the safety car, even then, I don't think recovery vehicles should be allowed onto the track. They should only be allowed on the track when there are no cars around, when the cars have already gone past, or let's say we've had a red flag or end to the session. That's when they should be allowed out, not even when the cars are behind the safety car. And then it goes on to say, given the track conditions and overall visibility for drivers, marshals, and recovery staff at the time, initially under a safety car followed by a red flag, and as efforts were focused on safe recovery, the AlphaTauri of Gasly in the pit lane was not immediately detected. Race control do not necessarily monitor all cars that may pit during safety car periods, as they are more concerned about any area containing an incident and neutralizing the field behind the safety car, which, with them saying that, I mean, that's understandable. You know, if they're trying to manage the whole, you know, Carlos Sainz situation there with his crashed car and, you know, deploying the safety car and then giving instructions to the marshals on, you know, deploying recovering vehicles and all of that, that makes sense that they, you know, wouldn't necessarily have the time to be like, oh, Pierre Gasly has pitted, we need to actually not put out the recovery vehicle. And obviously, you know, at the time of this all going on, the FIA race control, they're not able to monitor absolutely everything. And then it goes on to say, after his pit stop, Gasly rejoined the track and drove to his safety car delta time in an effort to catch the pack. When he reached the incident in turn 12 for the second time, marshals are working with a crane on the track, even though they say it is common practice to deploy recovery vehicles once a race has been neutralized. The review panel discussed whether the entry of the recovery vehicle at Suzuka to retrieve the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz was premature given the conditions. The review panel acknowledged that having recovery cranes on track at Suzuka during the weather conditions is a sensitive matter in view of tragic incidents of the past, such as obviously the Jules Bianchi crash that killed him, sadly. The panel determined that in hindsight, as the weather conditions were changing, it would have been prudent to have delayed the deployment of the recovery vehicles on track. Absolutely bang on there, were the review panel with that acknowledgement. It was acknowledged that every effort should be made to perform an efficient and safe recovery of cars. A longer recovery period in conditions such as those which prevailed in Suzuka may result in a race suspension, which basically means red flag. It was also acknowledged that while the safety car is used to neutralize the race, the FIA has control over the cars directly behind the safety car, but it does not have sufficient control over the cars that are elsewhere around the track. And then it goes on to drivers' obligations. It was also acknowledged that in accordance with the applicable regulations, if I can speak English, drivers have an obligation to limit their speed accordingly under yellow flag, safety car, and red flag conditions. The drivers are further obliged to apply common sense at all times. It would be great if the FIA could do that as well. In the case of Gasly, data showed that in an effort to close the delta time to the safety car, he'd been travelling at speeds which exceeded 200 kilometers an hour before the scene of the Sainz incident. After passing the Ferrari under a red flag, it should be noted that after the event, he expressed his regret during a steward's hearing, which resulted in a penalty. Tyres. The performance of the current wet weather tyres in extreme conditions was discussed. Analysis of tyre performance in wet weather conditions is ongoing between the FIA technical department and the official tyre manufacturer, which is Pirelli. I've got to say, just pausing on that, the wet weather tyres have got to be made into, surely, extreme wet weather tyres, or monsoon tyres is what they used to be like 20, 30 years ago, because the current wet weather tyres, as people have said on social media, and they're bang on in saying this, they're just intermediates with more grooves. They're not actually a proper wet weather tyre to deal with quite, bad rain. Intermediate tyres are basically for a track that is wet, but not like overly wet. And the wet weather tyres, they've got more grooves. They can deal with a bit of a wetter track, but not massively wetter, which they should be able to deal with, and they have been able to deal with better in the past. Advertising on track barriers. They say the issue of fixing advertising boards, their construction location materials is constantly under review by the Circuit Commission. I think that's because Gasly, he broke his front wing on the first lap by hitting a advertising board. I think that's why they were making that point. And then drainage, they make a point on that. Discussion is ongoing between the FIA and the circuit organisers on circuit drainage at Suzuka and improvements that can be made. And yeah, hopefully we can improve on that. Now, let's get into how much more have we got to this. Not too much. Let's go on to the findings and the measures to be implemented. Now, these were already implemented for the Grand Prix yesterday, but let's go through them anyway, so you guys know what the measures are going forward from now on. I think at least until the end of the season. So it says, as a result of the findings, as of the next race, which at the time was at the US Grand Prix, the following measures will be implemented. Information to be provided to the teams by means of a message via the official messaging system, and communicated via the intercom system to notify teams that a recovery vehicle is on track, with the obligation from the teams to inform their drivers. So basically, just trying to speed up the process of how, drivers know that there's recovery vehicles on track by getting the teams to notify their drivers in a quicker way. Development of a live VSC/safety car monitoring window to display the status of all cars on track behind the safety car in pits, to be used by race control and the ROC, which I'm not exactly sure what ROC stands for. Maybe someone can correct me maybe in chat for what that stands for. Race control procedure update to better define the allocation of tasks across the race control team under safety car or virtual safety car procedures. In specific relation to this review, delegation of monitoring of cars entering the pit lane of the safety car conditions and the consequent length of the safety car train. The FIA race director will hold a review of the incidents in Suzuka during the US Grand Prix drivers briefing, so obviously that's already happened. In conjunction with the teams, a review of penalty precedents for drivers not respecting the rules relating to yellow, double yellow, VSC or safety car conditions will take place. Assessment of the current application of advertising boards, their construction location, and materials used to avoid the potential for them to being torn off and thrown on track. And the final one is, which is interesting, dynamic virtual safety car, which is implementation of a new function that would change let me do that again. Dynamic virtual safety car, implementation of a new function that would change the delta speed required for the driver to follow before and in the sectors where there is an incident. This would aid the drivers to know where incidents have been declared. This will be implemented at the start of the 2023 Formula One season. So, yeah, implementation of a new function that would change the delta speed required. So I think basically what this is what people have talked about in the last couple of weeks, which is like declaring, I think they do this in other racing series where you declare like a slow zone or a slower zone that you have to go through where an incident actually is, that the drivers would have to follow. I believe that's what that is going to be. So yeah, there will be a dynamic virtual safety car in 2023. And the final couple things is race control structure. For the remaining races of 2022, the FIA will not use a system of rotating the role of race director. From the US Grand Prix in Austin and in the following races in Mexico, Brazil and Abu Dhabi, Niels Wittich, I think it is, will assume the position of race director with the support of race control staff. And race time limit and points distribution, obviously that was a bit of a controversy end of the race because we didn't actually know whether Verstappen was world champion or not. They say at the Japanese Grand Prix, Article 6.5 of the sporting regulations, which covers race time limit and points distribution, was applied correctly. However, the wording of the regulations will be revisited with a view to bringing further clarity during the next review of the sporting regulations. So they're probably going to just make it a bit simpler there with the wording. But let me know, guys, what you thought of that. And yeah, I'll just quickly read out some comments in the chat to see what you guys thought of that. What their findings were and what they will now implement going forward. Let me know in the chat whether you agree or disagree with their findings and what they had to say. And again, I'll get to some of your comments in just a second. And Let me have a look now. Crystal Racing says, as for Suzuka, race control panicked, poor and slow reaction to bringing out the red flag, definitely unacceptable. Snow Lion asks, why don't they have proper wets? Ridiculous in my opinion. I think really you need to ask that really of Pirelli. I don't think it's really up to the FIA with that whole, with the tyre compounds. I think Pirelli have just got to make a more extreme wet tyre in the end. Let me find some other comments here in the chat if I can in regards to this. Suzuka have a bad history, or have a history of bad marshals. It's a clerk of the course issue, says Rory Keegan. Yeah, that is true. And Haribo says, the FIA is not best at analysing itself. This should be a harsh, condemning report. Instead, it's soft and will try better next time. Exactly. Right, so we've just had some breaking news in regards to something I'm actually going to get onto as the final topic of this stream. Because after the race, Haas F1 protested the results of Alpine and Red Bull because they believed that because Alpine and Red Bull with Alonso and Perez's cars respectively, because they had bits flying off their cars and they didn't have, or they had parts of their cars that were damaged during the race and that they weren't given a black and orange flag, they believed that they should be given penalties. Because obviously Kevin Magnussen in the Haas has had bits hanging off his front wing 3 times this season and was given a black and orange flag, I think, for all 3 times. And then it ended up costing Magnussen massively in those particular races. So Haas protested the result, and then eventually, 5 hours after the race finished, they didn't give Red Bull a penalty, but they did give Fernando Alonso a 30-second penalty, which we'll get into the entire details of that in a second. I've just seen, though, breaking news, because Alpine have protested against Haas's protest admissibility, and the protest from Alpine is that Haas's protest was lodged too late for it to be considered by the FIA stewards for the US Grand Prix. And according to the FIA, the admissibility of Alpine's protest will be heard on Thursday evening in Mexico. So yeah, we will hear more about that in Mexico. In what, 3 days from now, pretty much? Yeah, we'll see what goes on with that. But in regards to Fernando Alonso and what happened to him, let's get into the whole penalty and what actually happened. If I can find it quickly. There you go. And let's increase the size of the PDF, and here we go. So you can see this is in relation to Haas's process of car 14, Fernando Alonso's car. And let's scroll down and get into it. So, procedure, Haas lodged a protest against car 14, entered by Alpine, alleging that during the race, the car was unsafe due to its right-hand mirror moving, then falling off, and that this was in breach of the regulations. The stewards first convened a hearing with Haas to determine the admissibility or otherwise of the protest. Present at the hearing were Gunsteiner team principal and Ayao Komatsu, a director of engineering. If you don't know who he is, he was Romain Grosjean's race engineer when he was when Grosjean was back at Lotus in 2012 and 2013. That's who that is. And obviously Grosjean was at Haas for a while as well. Admissibility, they state, it was noted that the protest was lodged 24 minutes out of time. However, the stewards, exercising their power under Article 13.3.5 of the International Sporting Code, determined that the compliance within the deadline was not possible in this case and that the protest was admissible. Which, to be honest, already sounds like, that's what the result of Alpine's protest is going to be. Is that because the stewards exercised their power under Article 13.3.5 and determined that the compliance with the deadline was not possible in the case, that Alpine's protest will probably be dismissed. So let's get into all of this stuff with the hearing and then the conclusion you can see here with the stewards. So at the hearing, on behalf of Haas, Gunther Steiner and Komatsu, on behalf of Alpine, Alain Permain, who's been at that team when they were Renault, Lotus, Benetton, he's been there forever. He's the one constant at the Enstone team. And on behalf of the FIA, it was Nicholas Tombasis, Joe Bauer, and Niels Wittich, which Niels Wittich is the FIA race director. Joe Bauer is the technical delegate, and Tombasis, I can't remember exactly what his role is, but he is a key role within the FIA in regards to F1. Let's now get into the hearing. So they say the Haas representatives, number 6 it says here, if you're just trying to follow along with your eyes, the Haas representatives asserted that the car was unsafe and noted that their cars had been given black and orange flag given the black and orange flag on 3 occasions this year for situations involving their car being in an unsafe condition, which is true. It has happened quite a lot. Mr. Steiner explained that Mr. Peter Kroller had contacted race control to report the issue with car 14 on 2 occasions during the race and was told that the matter was being looked into, which I think is why it says just above with the admissibility that they determined the stewards that the compliance with the deadline was not possible in this case, because Haas F1, according to them, they'd already made their case with this, and then they had to make it a bit later because I think the stewards just forgot about it or something. Then number 8, Mr. Permain submitted that the mirror came off through no fault of their driver or team and was due to the collision being caused by car 18, which is Lance Stroll. He also submitted that only one time during the race after the mirror fell off was there a car behind Alonso, and that the race engineer was warning the driver of the gap to that car. Further, there was a precedent in Suzuka in 2019 where the cars of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc were allowed to continue with mirror problems, which is true. Leclerc, didn't his mirror fall off and bounce down the track? I think at Suzuka that year. I think you guys might remember that. I know Cranky Yankee did a video about it, I think 3 years ago. So yeah, make sure to go check that guy out. Obviously, I'm sure plenty of you know who he is. They did a video on it, I think 3 years ago exactly, or just over 3 years ago. And yeah, that is true that there was precedence for this back at Suzuka that year. And then number 9, the evidence shows that car 14 Alonso was driven firstly with the mirror flapping for a significant number of laps, then with no mirror after it fell off. And then Joe Bauer submitted that a flapping mirror was dangerous and it could come loose and hit another driver causing injury, therefore it is unsafe. And Joe Bauer further stated, with number 11 there, that a car needs to have 2 mirrors, and that, in his opinion, with the stewards... sorry, let me just clear my throat quick. Which the stewards accept as expert opinion, the car was unsafe to be driven with a mirror missing. Mr. Tombasis agreed that the car was not safe in that condition. So now we get on to the conclusion of the stewards. Firstly, number 13, the stewards are deeply concerned that Alonso was not given the black and orange flag, or at least a radio call to rectify the situation, despite the two calls to race control by the Haas team. Number 14, Notwithstanding the above, Article 3.2 of the sporting regulations is clear. A car must be in a safe condition throughout the race, and in this case, Alonso's car was not. This is a responsibility of the Alpine team. And as you can hear, my throat is absolutely gone. So let me just quickly have a drink, guys. Right. That should be better now to finish the stream and this article. So let me read number 14 again with a throat that's in better condition. So, notwithstanding, Article 3.2 of the sporting regulations is clear. A car must be in a safe condition throughout the race, and in this case, Alonso's car was not. This is a responsibility of the Alpine team. Number 15, the stewards do not regard the Suzuka incidents from 2019 as precedents, which is interesting. You could definitely, have some debate about that. Number 16, having considered the evidence provided, the stewards determine that the protest is upheld and the protest fee is returned. Number 17, the stewards determined to impose a 10-second stop-go penalty, which is 30-second time penalty for Alonso applied after the race, and no penalty points are issued as this is a team matter. So we have had a lot of people on social media criticizing this and saying, well, what was Alonso supposed to do? It wasn't his fault. But technically speaking, Haas F1 were absolutely correct in their protest. And again, with the Suzuka 2019 precedent, maybe you could argue that Alonso should have been allowed to race on. But technically speaking, with the regulations, and I do agree with this part of the regulations, the penalty was applied correctly. The only thing I can really criticize is that it took so long after the race had finished for this penalty to be announced and applied to the results of the Grand Prix. Again, 5 hours it was after the race when this was announced. That's way too long. Way too long. But in terms of the implementation of the penalty, I don't have a problem with this. His car was not in a safe state, with the mirror hanging off and then bouncing onto track. Yeah, there were no cars behind him, but that's not the point. And Haas F1, they've had black and orange flags that have been called into the pits for to put a new front wing on for bits hanging off their front wing. So, it's absolutely fair, I think, punishment in the end. And I think this will probably be the result. I don't think Alpine's protest of Haas's protest is going to be successful. But guys, let me know in the chat. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you think that it was correct, the penalty being applied there? Or do you disagree? And what do you think of that whole situation? Let me know in the chat quickly. Before, though, I read your comments out in regards to this whole situation, and I've seen that I've got a super chat to read out as well. I'll make sure to get to that. Let me quickly just show how that affects the championship standings, because in the race yesterday, now that Alonso was given that 30-second penalty, the top 10 finishing order for yesterday's race was Verstappen obviously winning, Hamilton second, Leclerc third, Perez fourth, Russell fifth, Norris sixth. Then Vettel promoted to 7th, Magnussen promoted to 8th, Tsunoda promoted to 9th, and Ocon promoted to 10th. So let's get into how that affects the standings. On the driver's side, doesn't really affect it too much. Max Verstappen already, of course, the world champion. Leclerc is back into 2nd, only 2 points clear of Sergio Perez, as Perez is heading obviously this weekend into his home Grand Prix, and it is a massive Grand Prix for Perez. And honestly, it would be great if Perez could win this weekend. It really would. And with the Red Bull car as quick as it is at the moment, I think definitely it is possible. George Russell is in 4th. He's pulled away from Carlos Sainz in 5th. Lewis Hamilton, though, again, closing the gap to Russell and Sainz. And Hamilton only 20 points now behind His teammate Lando Norris is in 7th, with Ocon 8th, Alonso 9th, and Bottas in 10th. The constructor standings, no one has changed position, but it's a lot closer in the midfield now than it was before the US Grand Prix. Red Bull, again, officially Constructors World Champions. Congratulations to them. Ferrari are 2nd, and they are, Ferrari, 53 points clear of Mercedes. So Mercedes still have a chance of catching them, but I think realistically Ferrari will finish 2nd in the championship. And to be honest, I think they do deserve to finish in 2nd because they have had a much faster car this year. Alpine are 4th, but because of Alonso's penalty, the gap has come down from 13 points to 6 points, as obviously Lando Norris finished in 6th. And yeah, 6 points between them with 3 races to go. It is going to be such a close battle in the final 3 races. Alfa Romeo are 6th. Aston Martin closed the gap now down to just 1 point in 7th. Haas are 8th with AlphaTauri 9th. Haas pull out a gap of 2 points over AlphaTauri, but it's still a close fight there for 8th. And Haas and AlphaTauri do also close the gap, of course, to Alfa Romeo in 6th. So we could have a situation by the time we get to the final race where we've got 4 teams possibly able to get 6th in the championship. So yeah, that's going to be a very important fight in the final 3 races of 2022. But let's see what you guys have to say in the chat in regards to that whole Alonso thing. Again, do you agree or disagree with what I had to say? And do you think he deserved a penalty? Looking at it, I think it was the correct decision. The only thing I can really say is that, yeah, it should have been announced way earlier rather than 5 hours after the race had finished. I mean, I was still awake at that point and I was just about to go to bed. It was like 3 a.m. or something and it was announced. So yeah, crazy there, really. But yeah, let's get into your comments. Cheers, by the way, to Darth Lord Raven for the €2 super chat, who says, thanks for all the effort, mate. Keep it going on. Will do. Thanks for that. And right, let's get some comments read out about this incident. Haribo says the Alpine Haas penalty for Alonso was ridiculous. Perez had damage. It flew off. No penalty. Hours later, Alonso the opposite, although during the race the FIA said no action. Then after the race they say, bad Alonso, we allowed you to race with an unsafe car. Again though, as I pointed out with going through the actual article itself, they were notified, were FIA race control. Haas twice contacted them about it, but for some reason race control didn't do anything about it. So it's not that the FIA didn't know. Anyway, let's keep reading some comments here. Alpine protesting Haas's protest. This is Formula Courtroom, says Crystal Racing. Sparky Pizza's another example of Red Bull getting special treatment. Can't deny it, people. Actually, yeah, that's one thing we can look at quickly. Because obviously Perez was... Haas protested against his result as well. So, let me quickly display on screen the article relating to that and why they decided to, why they decided not to punish Perez, so you guys know, and, to have here full transparency. So here it is. And let's go down. Obviously, these are the stewards, Gary Connolly and Enrique Benaldi. Right, so let's get into it. Let me just read through. So, Haas lodged a protest against car 11 entered by Red Bull, alleging that the car was unsafe due to its front end plate moving, then falling off, and that this was in breach of the regulations. The stewards first convened a hearing with Haas to determine the admissibility. Present were Steiner and Komatsu. It was noted that the protest was lodged 31 minutes after, but the stewards, exercising their power, determined that the compliance with the deadline was not possible in this case. The hearing. Present at the hearing were Good Steiner, Peter Kroller, Ayo Komatsu. On behalf of Red Bull, it was Jonathan Wheatley and Paul Monahan. And on behalf of the FIA, the same people as it was for Alpine. Number 6, the Haas representatives asserted that the car was unsafe and noted that their cars had been given black and orange flag 3 times on this year for similar situations. Joe Bauer explained that after the end plate had fallen off, Red Bull had contacted him and sent him detailed photos of the front wing. Mr. Bauer determined that the car was not in an unsafe condition. Mr. Tombasis agreed that the car was not unsafe, so the conclusion was that the protest was dismissed. Now, do you guys agree that the car was unsafe? I wouldn't say a damaged front wing, the end plate falling off. I wouldn't say that is unsafe, but I will agree that the end plate falling off onto track is unsafe for other drivers. But yeah, I think with Alonso, it's more of a slam dunk because it's a mirror, and obviously for Alonso, he, needs to have mirrors on your car. But yeah, let me know whether you agree or disagree with the FIA's assessment of that. Jordan says, can certainly see where Haas is coming from since stewards haven't thought twice with giving them the flag. Don't like the post-race penalty, though. Ken Wallace says, if it was innocent, the Red Bull would have come out and proved rather than lying about it in Singapore. Horner was lying his arse off. We haven't broke cost cap. Turns out they did. Is Horner still suing Toto? We haven't heard anything about that since, so we'll see. Haribo says, so the FIA admit that after being pointed out the unsafe condition a car, they were looking into it and did nothing. Then after the race, they admit that they were wrong and punished the driver for that. I don't think it was race control that admitted they were wrong. I think it was the stewards that, when it says the stewards were deeply concerned, I think they were deeply concerned that the FIA race director who runs race control did not do anything about it. And I think what happened in reality is Haas notified them of it and they probably just forgot about it, which obviously is poor, but I think that's what happened. Mickey says, doesn't look good when Red Bull seem to keep getting away with stuff like this. Sparky Pizza, sketchy as hell with the FIA Red Bull end plate verdict. And also says, at this point, does anyone feel that F1 or the FIA will ever be harsh on Red Bull? I doubt it. I came to grips with reality now myself, lol. I mean, with that whole end plate thing, I think definitely you could have the argument that maybe it was dangerous, but I don't think it's as much of a slam dunk as it was with Alpine. So, yeah. I wouldn't say it's as obvious a penalty as it was with Alpine. But, yeah, that's all the topics I wanted to cover in tonight's stream. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover a couple more comments in the chat, and then I'll come to the end of this stream, because I've been live for almost 2 hours now. Prank says Perez's end plate fell off fast and was not flapping around for laps. And Crystal Racing, I'll finish on this comment from Crystal Racing. who says, imagine if IndyCar managed to get Kimi, Vettel, Alonso, Ricciardo, and possibly Hamilton to race each other in the US. F1 would be facing massive promotional issues. Most likely won't happen, but it would make Liberty Media panic. Yeah, it would definitely not be great for Formula One if that happened, but yeah, realistically, I don't think that's ever going to happen, unfortunately. But guys, cheers for coming along for tonight's stream. Been great to have you along and read out your comments and interact with you guys and go through all the topics we have gone through. So yeah, just to let you know again what the plan is for this week in terms of content. So the main topic of this stream that I did about the key updates to the Red Bull cost cap saga, I recorded that part of the stream. So if you did miss it or miss part of it, it will be uploaded onto the channel tomorrow at 6 p.m. UK time. So don't worry about missing that. You'll be able to check it out tomorrow, and I think I only did it for like 15 minutes or so. So yeah, that'll come on the channel tomorrow. Wednesday, there won't be anything. Thursday, I'll be live at 6 p.m. UK time for my Mexico City Grand Prix weekend preview, and hopefully I'll be able to bring you guys news possibly of what has happened with the protest with Alpine and Haas. Maybe you'll have to wait till Friday though. With that, we'll have to see what happens. Then, yeah, practice 1 watch along I'll be doing, and a practice 2 watch along as well on the Friday. And then on the Saturday, I'll be doing a qualifying preview, practice 3 watch along and qualifying watch along. And on the Sunday, a race preview and race watch along, and of course a race reaction as well. And unless something massive happens during the Mexico City Grand Prix weekend, then there won't be a video or stream on the Monday after. But if Red Bull, with this whole cost cap thing, if it's announced what their punishment is and the situation is basically over, then I will do a quick little, update video with possibly, goes through the, what's happened since what happened in the US Grand Prix weekend. But in terms of the exact timings of my streams and all of the content for this weekend, as you guys know, on Thursday mornings, my time, I post in my community tab, and also Thursday afternoons in my Discord server, I post a full list and content plan of what I'm going to be doing for each Grand Prix. So yeah, on Thursday, if you want to know what my plan is for the Mexico City Grand Prix weekend and what times I'm streaming for and going live, what times I'm going live at, make sure to go to my community tab on Thursday afternoon on my homepage, and you should be able to find it, either the first or second post down. But yeah, that's what's coming up on the channel this week, and I hope to have you guys around for all of that content. Cheers for coming around for tonight's stream, and if you are new to the channel, again, don't forget to subscribe for all of that content coming up. For everyone still watching, don't forget to smash the like button, and to help out the channel grow. And don't forget as well to follow me on Twitter at ShazHD5 and join our Discord server to keep up with the content on the channel. But guys, until the recorded video from this stream tomorrow, and until my next stream on Thursday evening at 6 p.m. UK time, previewing the 2022 Mexico City Grand Prix weekend, it has been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye.